Okay, let's call this meeting to order, 7:33. Tonight's agenda, start out with roll call. Start us out, Mr. Bacon.
Robert Bacon, Union Township, Isabella County, President.
Jim Zallet, President.
Tom Keequam, President.
Sanjay Chowdhury, present. Dave Coyne, Isabella County, Union Township, present.
Jeff Sweet, present.
Moving on to agenda item number 3, approval of tonight's agenda. How's that looking, everybody?
I'll make a motion to accept the.
I
second it.
Motion by Coyne, supported by Chowdhury. To approve today's agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. That motion is approved. Moving on to item 4, approval of minutes from November 30th, 2021.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Support. Got a motion by Mr. Sweet, supported by Mr. Coyne to approve the November 30th meeting minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. And the motion and meeting minutes are approved. Moving on to agenda item number 5, presentations. Anybody, anything?
Nothing at this time.
Public comment? Anybody in the Gailey back there? Anybody hiding? Okay. Well, let's move on to agenda item number 7, the reports. 7A, accounts payable approval.
Sherry is not here this evening, so I get to walk us through the accounts payable. You have in your packet the check register for the East EDA district, so we'll start with that. You see the two rounds of bills from Consumers Energy. You also see there the bill for the public notices for the demolition bids. For 5800 East Pickard, you see several bills here that relate to the project of 5800 East Pickard Road. The usual banners for Outreach, Block Electric, Outreach, this is the banners for 2022 for Outreach. Block Electric installing the gateway banners at the interchange, moving to winter. You'll see the final bill there for CID planning for our East and West EDA development tax increment financing plan updates. And of course our room rental for this space. Then some additional items, the MMI, the park bench activities that are ongoing, the asbestos survey for 5800 East Pickard, and then the end of the year activities for the Pleasant Time Brook Farm related to flowers along Pickard Road. The total bills for the East DDA district are come to checks to be paid come to $19,844.84. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have.
Make a motion to approve the East EDA bills as presented.
I second it.
Motion by Zalett, supported by Mr. Chowdhury. Approve payables tonight. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Approved.
Moving on to the check register for the West EDA district. We have 3 items there. You see the CID planning, the last part of that final payment. And same thing for the reception center, we divided the cost between the two DDA districts for this room. And then you'll see a reimbursement of the general fund. It says for yard signs for WD, and this is, these are actually the public hearing signs you may have seen mostly around the West DDA district. When we were doing the public hearing for the DDA Development and Tax Increment Financing Plans. We had to order about 20 of those signs, it was a little higher than that, but a few more of those signs. It came about $500 total to satisfy the state act's requirements for public hearing notices. Those were paid for on my township credit card, which is in turn paid by the general fund. So it requires a transfer of money from the DDA funds to cover that. It happens that the East DDA, you didn't see this item in East DDA bills because the East DDA district's fund dollars are kept in Isabel Bank, which is the same bank as our general fund money is kept in. And so for the East DDA, it was a simple transfer from one fund to the other. It was handled without a check. The West DDA district fund is kept in the Isabella Community Credit Union. And so in order to transfer that money, it requires a check. And so that's what you see there for $262.50. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about those. The total for the West DDA comes to $892.50.
Move that we pay the West DDA bills as presented.
I'll second.
Motion by Salad, supported by Bacon, pay the West DDA bills. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion's approved.
Moving then to the revenue expenditure reports, first for the East DDA district. Of course, you can see this is the end of the year here, for our revenues, you see we're just a hair over 100%, $526,626.29 in total revenues. Expenditures also coming to the end of the year, we're about 80% of budgeted amount for that, $140,688.25. We have a few expenditures left that may get into this fiscal 2021 expenditure side, but just a couple of items. The total on the expenditure side comes to, for the year as stands, comes to $637,065 and change for the East DDA district. You can see on the second page of that the net of revenues and expenditures expenditures exceeded revenues by about $110,000. Much of this, a significant amount of this was the purchase of the property, 5800 East Pickard. Another chunk of it is related to utility and parks projects, primarily Davis Park project, that make up a large chunk of those expenditures. Any questions on the East DDA revenue and expenditures?
Goes back to the checks, but the winter property tax, how does that, is it not owned by Union Township, or how does that work?
Well, the 1500 East Pickard is owned by the East DDA district.
Okay.
So it's, that's why it comes out of that fund.
Okay.
This is a pay yourself kind of a thing. Part of it comes back to Union Township, to the general fund. Part of it, quite frankly, turns around, comes back to the East DDA, and then part of it obviously goes into other jurisdictions. But the bill itself is paid by the East DDA district.
The only budget issue that was like over 100% right away lawn care, is that just an increase that they raised the rates halfway through the year that we didn't budget enough?
Well, we have actually an issue there where we have a longer season than anticipated, primarily.
Longer season.
But this is also something that we'll be talking with the contractor about to see if we can rein that in somewhat. But it was that he mowed more often than was expected. And it wasn't that he was he was trying to mow a golf course. He was mowing more frequently than he should have. It simply had a longer season than we were anticipating.
Plus, he did mow very good the year before.
Yes.
Anything, so
Yeah.
anything's gonna
Yes, indeed.
better than, is better looking.
So there's a possibility sometimes if we didn't budget enough, so that's why it's 25% more.
Right, and this will be something that we'll be sort of looking at as we're developing the budget for the coming year, but as I said, I'm also going to be, see if we can work with him to.
Yeah, try a number that jumps out. Thank you.
Other items for the East EDA? Moving on to the West EDA District Revenue and Expenditure Report. You can see we had for the year, we're at 99%, almost at 100% of the projected revenues. Total of $346,799 and change in revenues, the West EDA fund. On the expenditure side, we had a total expenditure of $94,894 and change. The West EDA, as you know, we have a number of large projects, primarily road projects, that keep getting delayed. South Lincoln Road, Broomfield Road intersection primarily. And so there were budgeted funds that were not spent. We have a meeting coming up with the Road Commission about the Lincoln Road project, which hopefully appears to be moving in a very positive direction for 2022. But nonetheless, the expenditures were less than budgeted at 87%. So here, the total net of revenues and expenditures is positive, $250,904 and change. Any questions on the revenue and expenditure report for the West EDA?
Yeah, between those two, east and west, is about 200,000 difference. That's due to the businesses there or what?
The West EDA has in terms of revenues you're talking?
Yeah,
Yeah, the West EDA has a smaller baseline, it simply does not, it's not as big a district, it's a smaller district. And so there's simply not as much property from which to collect tax increment revenue. So it has a smaller baseline for revenues than the East EDA.
How's our engineering going on the sidewalk project?
I wish I could say it was going well, it's not really the engineering, we have engineering plans. The issue is getting those easements, and we just have not been able to get anywhere. And in the end, we can pull the trigger on eminent domain and pursue it that way, but that is very expensive. It's certainly not something I want to pursue, but we can avoid it. I wish the road commission did what most road commissions do. I have not run into a road commission before. Before I came here, I worked for many years as a consultant in communities across the state. I have never run into a road commission that is so reluctant to buy right of way or demand right of way, frankly. From a development project or from other circumstances, to see roads like East Bluegrass and Broomfield built with a curb, a foot or two inside of the right of way line, to me is remarkable. Most counties, they would have a 120-foot right of way. There'd be plenty of room for us to put a sidewalk in, and put utilities and all the other things that should be there. But we really struggle because the county road commission does not want to get right of way unless they absolutely have to.
That's state highway, isn't it? Down that point?
I
I know on Bluegrass it obviously isn't,
But yeah, I-20 is great because the state has no compulsion on getting right of way. So yes, there we have plenty of right of way with, and of course you can see as a result what we can do with it. But on the county roads, in most cases, the best we have is the original 66 feet. So even on a two-lane road, you don't have a lot to work with because in the two-laners, you have ditches and other things that take up that space. So it is a significant challenge to get these easements.
so we are picking some projects in the summer.
We're certainly working towards getting these in. As I said, we have engineered plans for all the projects that have been approved. It's just at this point getting the easements so we can let out bids and get contracts.
So the people are resisting? or?
Yeah, in most cases, what we're running into is you mean we have a choice? Well, the choice is we prefer not to. And some of it is that, there is a concern about having to maintain it. This is a question that's come up even right up this front here, in front of the funeral home, where they were required to put in a sidewalk as part of the site plan approval for this space.
Right.
And they've had very legitimate concerns that, we have to plow it and maintain it. And that is absolutely true, they do. That is a requirement, just as it is in Mount Pleasant and elsewhere, that if you have a public sidewalk, you take care of it. So, in that sense, they're viewing it as a negative, as a liability rather than as a new benefit to it. And it is a challenge to overcome that. In the East EDA, where we have the service that takes care of the public sidewalks, then they're just a benefit. Somebody else is plowing. But outside of that environment, it is tough. And we don't have a way to, along Bluegrass or along Broomfield in particular, even along Lincoln, in West EDA, right now, we don't have a contract to do that. Bluegrass and Broomfield, we don't have a way to do that unless we do use general fund dollars. So it is a challenge to work with folks. Even just along this stretch here, we've been working with the Cornerstone Church. We've had almost no success getting the Sonic Lodge to even talk to us. But the Cornerstone Church, for example, has indicated some willingness, but they've never been able to pull the trigger on it to say yes. So even if that's the case where you do with a relatively friendly circumstance, they'd really rather not.
You do both sides?
Well, along Lincoln, we were just working on this west side. Basically, you go from this sidewalk in front of the building here and kick back to the Township Hall. That's one of the projects. With the idea of eventually extending it all the way down Lincoln. But like I said, one step at a time. Other questions about the West EDA, revenues and expenditures?
This money is lying in the checking account or saving or what?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The money, which is 526,337, that's lying where in the bank? In
Well,
the
it's actually-
checking or saving?
Well, it's just in their account. I assume it's checking. I don't, I wish Sherry was here to answer that, because she maintains those funds. I know she does work to have interest, earn interest on funds that are in reserve. I don't know all the details of how she does that, but I know she does make an active effort to earn interest on funds that are on the fund balance as much as possible.
Because if there is a little surplus, that should be kept a little bit more aggressive, somewhere you can get some money.
And you can actually see,
Checking from,
and you can actually see in the revenue expenditure report that first group, the bottom item under revenues, you see interest earned. And you can see, for example, that the year-to-date balance for this year was we earned $4,745 in interest on the funds that are out. So that's part of that effort that Sherry does to try to make that money work for us as much as possible.
If you look at balance sheets that are upcoming, it's got a breakdown for each DDA, how much is cash, savings, certificate of deposits.
Yeah.
So that'll give you an idea. But most of it's in interest-bearing accounts, such as small rates that they pay.
Yeah, so at this point, we'll just turn, as we have the balance sheets for both the East and the West DDA, that does, as you said, just, it shows where the money is, for each of the funds, and what the balance is down at the bottom, the ending fund balance, down at the bottom for each the two funds. And I'm happy to answer any questions about those.
Any questions? You guys are just let him finish, he would have got to that.
That was perfect timing. That's called a great segue, is what that is.
It's been a while. I'll try to get it.
So let's let the record show the income, expense of statement, balance sheet was presented and filed, received and filed for the meeting minutes. Moving on to 7C in your packet, page 14, we have the board member matrix. Keep an eye on your expiration dates.
Dr. Chowdhury, unfortunately, Brian Milky was not at the last board meeting, so your appointment is one of the ones that will be on the next agenda, next Wednesday, the 26th, for your EDA board reappointment. And I think that's one of the things you were interested in. So it will be back on that next board agenda when the supervisor is back to be able to take care of that.
Let's move on to item 8, new business. So we have a request for board action. You want to walk us through that, please?
Thank you. This is a request for board action to approve a contractor to demolish and remove the principal building at 5800 East Pickard. This is part of the project. We purchased this property last fall. It's a project, it's a purchase that was made for several reasons, one of which was to facilitate relocation and expansion of the sewage pump station, number one, that's on the property. That pump station is being moved to the south end of the property. Right now it's kind of in the middle, a very awkward spot. So a larger station will be built at the south end. The existing station will be demolished and removed. And as part of that, we are also going to want to take down the building, which is a functionally obsolete building. It was built as a house in the 1950s, remodeled into offices. It's not bad on the inside, it's a very nice space, but it just is, it's not functional. The spaces are awkward, and we'd like to clear that and set the property up between the relocation of the pump station and removal of this building, set this property up so that it's ready for redevelopment of something new and more functional on that site. So this is a contract to, as I said, to remove the building and dispose of the material and take care of the site restoration. We did send this out for bids. You have a copy of the let's say it's the updated invitation to bid. The reason it's updated is initially we did a request for bids for both the asbestos determination survey and also then the abatement of any asbestos and demolition. Put it all, basically asking for contractors who would take care of all of it. What we got back from the contractors was they all wanted the survey first. And so with that information, we went back and updated our bid. We did get bids actually for the asbestos survey portion. So we hired a contractor. You saw that in the check register, Midstate, to do the survey. And you have a copy of the survey in this packet. Then we invited all the contractors that responded to us initially, there were 5 of them, to submit a bid just for the demolition. From that, we received 3 bids that you have before you from the Isabella Corporation, Foley Contracting, and your Burke Sand and Gravel. We have reviewed the bids. We found them all to be responsive. And as we noted in here, Foley Contracting provided the low bid, but we would be pleased to work with any of these bidders on this project. As I said, all were responsive, all are well known to the township, they've done work for us before. The one item we note is in there is that just to make sure that our whole scope of request in the updated invitation to bid is taken care of, we would recommend that any motion by the EDA board to approve one of the contractors has a qualification that approval is based on the updated invitation to bid being specifically required to be incorporated into and made part of that authorization for services to ensure that all the work is done. The reason we're doing that is that some bidders listed out every detail. They actually listed everything from our scope. Others simply had a general statement of demolition and cleanup. And so we just like to tie it to that original invitation of bid so that the work is, guaranteed the work is done with all those details taken care of. There is for example, a well on the property right next to the building, a small well that needs to be abandoned. And so some bidders specifically noted it, other ones did not specifically note it. So that's not the only item. They're just small details, but I want to make sure they're covered. So with that in mind, you have a resolution, a proposed resolution on page 18 of your packet that includes that language that we just talked about. And you have, as I said, all three bids in your packet. And I'm happy to answer any questions that come up as we go along.
Tom, I need to go on the record that I am a part owner of the Isabella Corporation and such, will be abstaining from the discussion and vote on this matter.
Just let the record show. Mr. Zalin's abstention. Any questions anybody has on this?
Well, they all cover the same scope of the job, and we see the prices. What other differences have you noticed that would, what should we be looking for in terms of our decision making? If we have the same scope,
Yeah.
and other than price,
It's a tough question. As I said, all three contractors are eminently capable of doing this work. They're all three well-known and experienced companies. In all three cases, I believe they've worked with the township before, in one capacity or another. Some in multiple projects. From that perspective, I don't have a particular preference. The main difference between, I mean, for example, Boley Contracting, one of the items in our invitation did was we asked them to provide information on other projects. What have you done, references. They were the only one that responded to that part of it. That's a kind of a general statement to include that. We know all three of these contractors, so it's not as if we don't know what they've done.
Right.
But Boley did respond to that. They also happen to be the low bidder. But frankly, as I said, I would be completely happy to work with any of the three of these contractors. They do excellent work, and all three of them will do a great job for us if we hire them. So it's a tough call. I would just take a look at the material they provided,
and they're all local.
make your best choice. You are not required to approve the low bid. I will say that. Certainly, obviously, you have a fiduciary duty to protect the funds of the township, but the funds of the EDA funds. But there is no requirement. For example, and a good example of that is the project we just went through. We did not take the low bid for the EDA plan project. There were reasons for that were identified, but if we could have, the company or companies, there's two that were partnering, that came in at the low bid, would have been able to provide a plan that met the state requirements. In that particular case, it was felt that one company, CIP Planning, had the best skills to do what we needed to have done that is unique to this board and the two districts that we deal with. And I think those unique skills that they had are reflected in the final documents that we received. And in particular, that implementation strategy. So it's a hard call in this case, I have to say. But anyway, I just want to make clear, you really can choose any of the three of them. The low bidder is obviously one process, but you are not required to choose the low bidder if you find another contractor to be the best choice.
Is Boley considered local? Boley is? I thought they were Claire.
Oh, it's clear.
Yeah, they're, I would consider that to be
Considered local.
local, yeah.
Yeah.
The other two pay taxes,
They could,
No, they were
they're in
clear.
Clare County.
the other two pay taxes in Union Township,
Yes, they do.
Yeah, I like that.
which I like,
I do too.
I like
I
that.
want to support local as much as possible.
Well,
If
I would like that,
yes,
if it was on my side, I'd want to have that consideration there too, but I in the city.
And what I would suggest would be, for purposes of the discussion here, if you do have specific reasons for picking one of the companies, maybe, I mean, there's not any place in the resolution to do that, but you could add it in as another sentence and just state your reasons, or just state them ahead of time. If you feel a particular contractor is the best choice for like the reasons you discussed. That way it kind of gets into the motion in the minutes, why you selected one.
Well, I would like to, state that paying taxes should have something to do with the determination. There is a little, there's like a $20,000 difference on one of them, but, which is a real good company.
Yeah, I've worked with all three of them quite often. I'm okay with Bowley or McGurk. In this case, it's a pretty small job and pretty straightforward. I would, and Bowley's local by all means of the worker. It wouldn't surprise me, he has property in the east and the west.
On McGurk's, it says McGurk's bid was the only bid response to make specific note to Township's request to permanently close and cap the existing well on the property. I don't know, does that mean Bowley wouldn't do that?
No, Bowley's going to meet the scope of work that we asked for. They just
That's the scope.
specifically stated in their documentation.
Oh, I see.
So all three of them are going to meet the requirements that in the invitation bid, what we refer to as the scope of request. It just happened, as we just noted, that McGurk caught that detail. Bowley, caught the detail of providing references. So just some differences between the bids.
And that is covered under your qualification underneath here, isn't it?
Exactly. If you make that part of your motion, that will take
That
care of
would
it.
take care of not covering capping. Well, I think just because I do know McGurk's our property owners in the township, that I would like to make a motion to approve the bid from McGurk to demolish and remove the building, principal building at 5,800 East Pickard, parcel ID 14-013-020-01300, along with the removal and disposal of debris, refuse, materials from the parcel and associated site, restoration for a fee not to exceed $15,785. This bid is accepted with the qualification that the updated invitation to bid document be specifically required to be incorporated into, made part of the authorization for services to ensure that all requested work under scope of requested is completed.
But there is a almost 1,400 difference between McGurk and Bonnie.
Before, there could be more discussion in motion, but before you do that, I would recommend seeing if there's a second.
Yep.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Bacon, support by Coin. Any more discussion?
Yes, I feel, there is, about 1,400 difference between McGurk and Bonnie. And if they are doing the same thing, both of them, and this is to the advantage to the Union Township, save $1,400.
Yeah, but Gerks pay more taxes and support our township than Boley does. Boley's leading in this township.
McGurk is in the West EDA district. So their taxes go right back into the fund this pays.
Yeah.
That's my little deciding.
Well, they have it in both,
They do, yes, you're right.
both sides, east and west, they own property.
That's the only,
You can't always go with the cheapest.
Yeah, but that EDA plan project, I don't recall, I don't remember the numbers now, but there was a big difference between the two bidders, between the low bidder and the bidder that you selected. It wasn't, I don't think they were the highest bidder, but there was 8,000 or 9,000 maybe, a difference between the two. But, so like I said, there were good reasons that we went with CIP planning and spent that additional money that I think are reflected in the end product. But, there are, if you have, whatever the reasons are, you justify the difference for the reason mentioned, the property owner in the township.
I just think we should support people that if it's close, that should be in our township. They're supporting us, we need to support them.
Any more discussion? Hearing no more discussion, all in favor of Mr. Bacon's motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same?
Abstain?
Dr. Tucker, how did you vote? Well, you can't abstain. It's either yes or no.
No, I don't agree with that. Because I gave my,
Did you vote yes? I didn't hear.
no,
You voted no?
yeah.
Okay.
So 4 yes?
3 yes, 1 abstain,
4 yes.
4,
Yeah, you have 6 total, so.
4 yes, 1
4 years.
no,
and 1
abstain.
abstention and 1 no.
Take care of our work in Travis, so. Right.
What else we have here? So I'm still confused on vote. The chair doesn't vote.
What's that?
The chairman doesn't vote?
You do vote, absolutely. Are you a yes on that motion?
yes, I'm a yes.
Okay, so then at 4 to 1 is, the motion passes, because you need a majority of the members present.
Right.
Jim's not present for this item, so there are 5 members, and so,
Okay, that's,
yeah, so you hit,
I was
you
gonna
get
say-
4 of the 5,
all right,
and so the motion passes in that circumstance.
yeah, it passes. Okay, let's move on to eight B.
So this item is just an introduction. We have, we've budgeted funds for 2022 for potential grant programs to try to encourage some private improvement projects. As you have, before you have our memo dated January 11th, and in there we've noted there are 6 categories that are in your implementation strategy document that as part of our EDA development tax improvement financing plan materials. We have a separate implementation strategy. There's just a bunch of projects and priorities for those. So within that, there were 6 broad categories of potential grant funds, funding programs. Beautification, pedestrian access improvements, freestanding sign improvements, building facade improvements, bicycle parking, and exterior lighting improvements. Out of that, we have in the 2022 budget, we have $40,000 that you have set aside for what the budget calls community improvement projects, community improvement grants, and that's $40,000 in East EDA and $40,000 in West EDA. We have proposed before you, just as an initial discussion, to target 3 of those categories to invite grant applications: beautification, pedestrian access, and signs. And we essentially targeted those because we felt, looking at it from the staff perspective, that seemed to be, those categories seem to have the ability to have an immediate impact on the character of a site, and it also, frankly, would be the easiest to get this program started. They are, for example, we did include building facades, because that's a category we'd like to do. That one's going to require a good bit more effort, because we really need to kind of develop some standards. What do we want, for building? What would we approve, and what will, so that anybody applying would know before they start designing things or putting a concept plan together. They know the kinds of things we're looking for. So that gets a little bit more detailed than like you hit on immediately. So with that in mind, we included this memo. General criteria for consideration for each of the projects. You might look at this as kind of a skeleton for each of the potential grant programs. This is intended to just put it before you to generate some discussion, get your thoughts on it. None of it is cast in stone in any way. This is just a starting point. We can add to it, we can change, we can target other areas, we can target one of these areas. This is entirely your preference ultimately to what you would like to see.
I agreed with 2 out of your 3 focus points, but the beautification, freestanding signs. But I guess I would think that the building facade, although it may take some extra work, but I guess what work would it entail? I mean, it'd have to fit within the township building codes, correct? Or, I mean, because some buildings just need a new coat of paint, or, so I guess I think we could do a lot more impact with building facade. Just like the new Dollar General, I was surprised to see vinyl siding on it. That was pretty disappointing, but, so we have a pretty low bar, I guess. So if we increase paint or there's businesses that just need some paint and maybe some new vinyl siding on top. I mean, if we're gonna allow vinyl siding on a new business, so
You know,
I would like to see that, I guess, but.
and I appreciate that. Let me give you a little background on the Dollar General. Our zoning ordinance, we have a new zoning ordinance adopted in 2020. That ordinance, based on the direction of the planning commission at the time, did not include any standards for building, what I call building composition and form. There are some zoning ordinances, the city of Mount Pleasant being one of them, that is almost entirely form-based. It actually, that's our primary focus. They don't get land use is secondary at best. And that's a style of zoning that it's certainly more popular in larger cities. But it's a style of zoning where you really entirely hone in on building form and composition and be very specific on what you want. And I think to some extent, in reaction to the city of Mount Pleasant, the Township Planning Commission went entirely the other direction, said we don't want to even talk about that. And so the ordinance didn't talk about it. When I came on board, as this ordinance was wrapping up is when I came on board, I was able to give some influence on this, but this was an area where it was clear that there was no desire to regulate building form or character. And I knew that we were likely to get that Dollar General because I dealt with them in other communities. So I pushed it a little bit, but I couldn't get any movement on it. They had a project that came in addition to the Dollar General. The other project has not yet been built, where the building, the character came into question, and they really started looking at, this is not right. And then the Dollar General came in, and so they had two projects where they were really looking at, we don't have any rules. We have no hook to get them to do X. Behind the scenes, Peter Galloway and I, and Peter Galloway is our zoning district, we pushed and prodded Dollar General because the project that came in initially was their standard box. If you go between here and Midland, you see what they just built. In almost any rural area, that's the general, that box is the project they built. That's what they came in with. And we told them, we said, that's not gonna fly. You're gonna have a hard time. And now, we were to some extent, standing out in the air, because we had nothing underneath us to stand on and say, we can say no to you. Because if they met all the site plan requirements, the law says we must approve. But we really pushed them to say, look, you're an East EDA, look at those streetlights, look at those banners of flowers, sidewalks, we maintain that lawn area, we have sprinklers out there. We're putting a lot of money into this corridor, you need to do better. And it took a while, but we pushed, shoved, and cajoled them into what you see, which was one step up. I worked with Dollar General and another community that did have building form and composition standards, that we shoved them one more step up and got hardy plank siding on it, but we couldn't do that here. So the vinyl siding, that was not something to move on, but we did get a little better design. Although they have the wrong lighting on the building right now, even the lighting is going to be more decorative when it finally comes in. So that in mind, certainly you as East EDA, or as an EDA, both EDA districts, you have every ability to say, we will approve this and not this. So that's where I was getting into, that it's going to take more effort. Because we can't simply rely on the zoners. We did, by the way, in the punch list set of amendments that were just approved in November, we got basic building form and composition standards in the ordinance. They don't really get into materials, they just, I think, the general statement about material being durable, it still will allow for vinyl siding, but it ups the game a little bit on design, so that we're not pushing, cajoling, and saying, you gotta meet this. And it still would probably allow that same design that you see at Dollar General, but it would not be an argument, it would be, this is the minimum, go do it. But for the DA district, in terms of you providing potential funding to a project like the Dollar General, to move them up again, you would need to set specific standards. No vinyl siding, for example, is a very valid standard. Basic design standards, we want X, whatever it is, in order for us to look at it. The numbers in the budget were not really intended for a building facade project. So the 40,000, we could do a grant for 40,000, it would cover one project, and not even a lot of that money. So that's part of, like I said, for those reasons, my suggestions for this year is that we avoid it. But during this year, my suggestion is that we develop those standards that we then use for next year. We do that over this winter and early spring. When we talk about the budget for 2023, we can incorporate that and make sure there's plenty of funding. We have the benefit of having contractors on the board that can talk to us about what those numbers ought to be, and also kind of help to create those standards. So I think for next year, for 2023, I think we're in really good shape to be able to do that, but not necessarily.
No, that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Would it just be like a
That's
percentage,
good
granting
discussion.
like
I
a
like the
percentage of the
thoughts.
cost of the project? Is that
This
how
is
it's
just-
like?
That's a separate animal almost.
Yeah.
This is just a simple little $40,000.
Right.
They ain't gonna
Right.
buy anybody
Right.
whistle Dixie.
Right.
And with a maximum potential award of $2,000. I mean, we're simply trying to entice
Somebody.
some of the blight buildings. So, hey, we'll help you.
Yeah.
Or a sign that's fallen over,
Right.
hey, we'll help you.
It's a bigger question.
Well, I was asking, is this gonna be based on a percentage or a flat, number, like you said, 2,000 or 20%, or
Yeah.
depending on what category?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and this is something that you can, obviously, you can decide however you wish. We wrote this, we covered both parts. We wrote as a percentage of the project up to a certain amount, so no matter what, any one grant award would get no more than X. The numbers, as I said, it's just a starting point. I think, for example, for the beautification, we set it at a fairly low percentage. It could be higher, we could do 50%, we could do 100% if we want to. We make it anything we want. The $2,000, again, is fairly low, as Tom, as you said, it was intended just kind of entice somebody to do something that they might not otherwise do. I've certainly seen cases where even a $500 reward moves people. Anyway, the numbers, as I said, can be adjusted as you feel is appropriate for any of the categories that we do. I will tell you, the pedestrian access improvements, this is basically the private sidewalk. We have public sidewalks along M20 at East EDA. But in most cases, we don't have a private sidewalk that goes from there to the building. As we had projects come in, like the Dollar General, we've gotten that done. So Dollar General has a private sidewalk that goes up to the building from the public. But a lot of properties don't have that. And so that was one, actually, when I wrote it, I originally wrote it at 100%, up to 100% of the project cost. But the idea of, we want to incentivize getting those connections done. I adjusted, went to 75, it could be 50, it could be whatever we want. But it's really incentivizing the kinds of projects we'd like to see happen, in making use of some of these dollars to encourage it, if we can.
Well, there's a veterans organization, obviously that's half business, half nonprofit hybrid, that certainly could use some signage updates.
Signage, they could use the building for some updates.
They could.
Yeah, I mean, and so incentivizing those, that'd be a great example of a project where they wouldn't pull the trigger on their own, but
Yeah.
with a little help,
A little help, they might update their signage.
And what we would do in terms of these programs, I mean, I think I included in here, application review process, just again, an idea of what that might look like. I noted under number 3 on that, this is on page 65 of the packet. Number 3, there are potential direct mail or delivery of invitations, where we might, for example, go to the VFW, it's VFW, right? Yeah. And go to them and say, hey, look, we have these programs. Just want to make you aware of them if you're interested. Happy to talk to you about it. So kind of encourage somebody that has an older sign. Say, hey, we'd love to help you.
That comes to mind.
Then when you do that, you gotta come to the regulations of the sign regulations at that point too.
That's right.
You can't replace a sign that's 20 feet tall, you gotta come to the new,
Yeah.
but it would look nicer.
They have the same problem with the trees are blocking their existing
Yeah.
sign, they would
Yeah.
not want them the same height.
Well, and this is another area
They would not want it the
where
same
we could have standard. I mean, for example, on the signage, you can see there at the top of page 65, we made a note, Yeah, up at the top, monument sign, at the top there. The idea of limiting the grant awards to the, what I usually call a ground sign or monument style sign, where it's on the ground, you know, base there, it's not sticking up 18 feet in the air. Our ordinance still allows those taller signs. And this was an argument we had with Dollar General, their sign's gonna be 18 feet tall. And I said, you guys are crazy doing an 18-foot tall sign, you're gonna be blocked by the trees, you're gonna be right at the height of those trees. But, you know, this is the mentality of, you know, the national corporations or whatever, they, as far as they're concerned, this is what we always do, this is what we're going to do. And if our ordinance had said, thou shalt make it 10 feet tall, no more, they would have come in with that. But right now, our ordinance allows a larger range. It encourages a shorter one. There's language in there that says, we'll give an incentive if you do it shorter, but it doesn't require it. So you could, as part of
That
the grant.
tree's coming out anyway, isn't it?
Well, it was,
The party store, isn't that the tree, one of the trees that's blocking it?
it is, it's one, but that one really wouldn't have blocked the sign. But the ones that are remaining, it will be blocked partially from view. They're probably going to regret that 18-foot tall sign. But that's their business, you know. We encourage them to look, otherwise they chose not to. But you, as I said, you could require that style sign, that if you're going to fund part of it, you know, it shall be this, and it might be incentive enough for them to go, no, we're out to do that. If it's going to cost us less to do that, then we'll do it. And we are, by the way, on the sign business, we are going to be looking at the sign ordinance again. Probably starting sometime this year, there's been a U.S. Supreme Court case that's come in that affects billboard signage and how we regulate that. And so as part of that, we're going to look at that issue again. And I'm hoping we might move the planning commission along the line and have to study a more uniform standard. I don't want little, you know, I don't want every sign to be this small. I mean, there's some communities out there that you can go down to Florida, a few places where they have crazy restricted signage.
Chippewa,
every-
Township.
You know, Home Depot is trying to use a 20-square-foot sign, you know, that's 4 feet tall. We're not looking for that. I understand sign requirement, the sign needs, and we want to build it so that the ordinance in a way that would allow everybody to have ample signage, but to have kind of more uniform, you know, height.
Chippewa Township has a kind of a ridiculous one that they grabbed from somebody down in the suburbs of Detroit or something.
Yeah.
And theirs is like, because I was working on a project in Chippewa Township, it was 5 square feet. And that was one side.
Right.
You couldn't even have a two-sided sign any more than 5 square feet.
Yeah,
It's like,
you can't, and that's what I'm saying, you partly are really violating the First Amendment. We have to protect the constitutional rights of businesses and anybody to be able to have a display of message. It has to be legible, it has to be done in a way that the size is appropriate for the location, so that message that they want to share is legible. And it's important for our business district. So, like I said, I know we want to squeeze it down, as you said, to 5 square feet or even 20 square feet. I'd say 24 square feet as a basis. Those are numbers that are just too small to be able to really get your message out properly. You know, if you're Home Depot, you could go out a 24 square foot sign, and people know what a Home Depot is. But they don't know what Doug's Small Engine Repair is, and he can't get Doug's Small Engine Repair in a 24 square foot sign and have anybody be able to read it. And so you need to have that at a reasonable size. And so it's always a balancing act, but that's something we'll be looking at. It's not going to happen for a while. We'll be looking at it as well this year. But as I said, from the perspective of this board, you certainly absolutely have an influence on the types of signs that are installed based on whether or not you fund a grant for it.
So just information, or do we have a motion somewhere here?
Well, there's not a particular motion. You can certainly by motion, if you would like to provide direction. You can also simply provide direction kind of by consensus, things that you're interested in. If there's something here that you see that you don't like, Jeff's comments about building facade, I think was excellent.
Yeah, my 2 cents is, this is a fantastic starting point. whether it's 100% or whatever, there's some incentive, and I guess I'd be comfortable with just putting this out there and sending the mailers out, say, hey, we've got the EDA is gonna fund for these type of improvements, and here's the formula, and see if you get any hits. And if you may get a bunch of people that'll show up in that, we're too generous, but if you don't get any, well, then, but this, to me, is as good a starting point as anything for, as far as I'm concerned, and I would rather, get the ball rolling and get this out before the construction season out and publicize, something. The $40,000, I think, is an appropriate, amount, very comfortable, we can, for a budget, and let's see what happens, and as we get feedback, well, we can't do enough with that, or can you go half, or whatever. But I would like to retain, rather than having a strict set of standards, give that discretion to the board to approve each grant, because, like I said, if VFW comes,
A nonprofit might be a little bit
a
more.
nonprofit might be a little different,
business.
or, depending on the situation, when you're talking about sign ordinances, one, I would be in support of doing the low-profile signs in the East EDA, because we've got the trees, they're coming, they're beautiful, and every so often we get a request to chop them down because they're being blocked. And so if we can help, yep, we understand it's gonna cost some money, if we can help you put some low-profile signs and keep the trees, fine. Out in the West EDA, where there's not so much trees on M20, yeah, not a big deal. And so I in favor of the board, you've got a lot of very, very good business acumen on this board that I think can handle those kind of decisions pretty easily, rather than spend a lot of time trying to, make it onerous. I write it on the back of a napkin as far as I'm concerned, and that's enough to make it, and we can define, we can say, yep, here's what it is, and how we verify, the work's been done, or how we, but at this point, I would much rather get something out there with minimal direction, get the thing started, rather than spending a lot of time trying to perfect something that we don't even know kind of where the demand's gonna be, where are we gonna be to help spur the demand.
In terms of the numbers, the percentage of the kind of maximum awards, any comments on those, that part of it? Did we get those right, or would you like to do something different?
I thought they looked good.
I think they're a great starting point.
Yeah.
Time will tell whether,
We've got a budget,
yeah,
you got a minimum,
yeah, and if we,
then look at it next year.
yeah, and if we get overwhelmed that the demand is way out there, then probably the percentages look good, and we just, ideally, it'd be nice to put 40,000 or a number in there every year, and just over time, rather than trying to gear up all at once, but, I think they're a good start, and whether you wanna tweak them, but I think, for $2,000 to $3,000, $4,000 a shot, I think that for the people that would be beneficial to, I would think that'd be a lot of money, but maybe not.
So I guess a question for you is, there's a couple ways we could pursue this. You asked earlier about a motion. My intent was to come back to you with a more detailed program, and I'm happy to do that. If you would like us to move forward quicker, you could make a motion to approve the outline and direct staff to pursue the grant program, inviting applications. So it's your comfort level on that. I would suspect it's probably going to be close to your next meeting before I would have the details ready, application form, all that anyway. So I'm kind of inclined to suggest that bring it back to you to take a look at before we send it out. But the idea was to come back to you in a form that you could say, yeah, I'm happy with it, fix this or fix that, and it goes.
Yep. So you're looking for some feedback between now and the next meeting, but yeah, I would agree with that approach. Just bring us back something that, but I feel a lot more comfortable, if you guys write the motion, so it's got everything and put some thought into it, rather than someone up here myself included, just trying to wing something that may or may not meet the real intent, so.
Then we can vote on it then and get going before
Yep.
the season.
Yep.
Instead of waiting and, but.
I think at that point, certainly, what we'd be bringing back to you is what we would intend to present publicly. So it would be out and about very soon after that February meeting.
I guess, so say we're in month 8, you know, no one has brought any requests to us. Would we have flexibility to, if somebody came in and said, hey, I want to paint my storage trailer that I have right next to my building, the same color as my building instead of what it currently is, do we have some flexibility there if these other 3 areas aren't sought after, or since we have that money budgeted, I guess?
So my thought is, taking the comments made, probably what we do is write this language here, I mean, things like, talking about signs, monument style sign. We would write that as a guideline, general guidelines, these are the things we would like to see. But we would also write on the application form somewhere, it would say that the ED board has discretion to approve other projects. So you would have flexibility. These are your funds. You would adopt some guidelines at your next meeting, but they would be guidelines, not thou shalt like an ordinance.
I think that'd be a great
That's-
approach.
That sounds good to me. I think this is pretty close.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
It's great.
Historically, I
Spend a lot of
think
extra time
this is a
because,
good reaction plan to many outstanding requests we have from 6 years ago
yeah,
that we didn't have anything
Yeah.
of the sort. So
Yeah.
now we're trying to put some parameters to it,
yeah,
and I think there'll be some people interested. But again, I'm still looking at this as an incentive program, not just picking up somebody's tab.
Right, we don't want
Paint
to,
job.
so nice that people neglect their
They
stuff.
still
in order
gotta
to come and
contribute,
pay
but
for it.
we're willing to
Yeah.
We don't want to
assist.
be too generous.
yeah, no.
But I think we're pretty close, and then we add the language like you're talking, we still, of course, the reserves are right, and
Yep.
da-da-da, give us some, I'll say wiggle room, but
Yeah.
kinda, but I think we're pretty close. Well, maybe we could get a motion, and wrap this up next week.
Sounds good.
I appreciate your feedback on that. If anything else comes to mind, individually, welcome to send me an email with your thoughts. And we'll put material together and have it for you to take a look at next month.
Good. Thank you, Rodney.
And the building facade, we'll start working on that as well. So we'll come back to you with kind of maybe a similar outline for that for next week. That won't be next month, but we'll bring back it early, as probably the March we have that. March
You have some
meeting.
volunteers for your township signage ordinance. So moving on to agenda item number 9, pending business. What we got here, this amendment, or the calendar approval. How's that looking, everybody?
So you obviously approved your calendar earlier. After that, the Board of Trustees made one change. They changed the date of the annual joint meeting where all the boards and commissions are invited to meet together. We haven't done this in quite a while. We have since 2019, actually. I have never done it as a result of COVID, but they're intending on doing that. The date that everybody was available on the Board of Trustees was turned out it was the 6th of April. So it was an adjustment from what you approved. This would be just approving the calendar that includes that date. And you're all invited to come on the 6th of April for that annual joint meeting.
I've attended that routinely,
Once.
Mark, and over the years. Is that something we gotta do as far as a motion, or?
It does, yeah, I would just have a motion to adopt, just as it said, you don't have to include the C4622 part, but I just do it as a motion to adopt the amended 2022 calendar.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the amended 2022 calendar to reflect the change made to the joint meeting.
Support.
Motion by Bacon, support by Coin, to adopt the amended calendar. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion's approved. Moving on to agenda item number 10. Director comments?
Thank you. I do have something I want to say. It is, in part, in large part, I'm speaking to the choir in this. But I want to say it partly get on the record, and hopefully those that aren't here today will also hear it when they watch the recording, hopefully. I've noticed some things. You've noticed stuff. I've noticed that a number of the members of this EDA board are either not receiving or not reading emails from our office. It's come up a number of times now, enough, as I said, that I've noticed that apparently emails are not getting read or not getting received. So first of all, I want to ask, is there anybody that is not receiving our emails?
I get Amy's.
And that's where most are coming from. They all, and we do that on purpose. I send things occasionally, but most come from
Some of them come to my box as focused and some come in as other.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that would be.
Yeah, somebody's come in as on focused, and then other people's, I think yours come in as other.
Okay.
And I'm less likely to be, more likely to be buried into 8,000 emails from stores I frequent or something.
So
Companies.
what I would suggest, if that's the case, you should be able to, in your email system, tell it to, this email address is important, no matter what. And so I would take the time, put my email in there, and make sure Amy's email is in there as something that's important.
I'm retired, I just don't check it like I used to.
Well, and this is, the other question I noted here was, want to make sure we have your current active email address. Some people, over time, they change. They might still have the old email. I have one that, a Yahoo email I created in 1999. I check it sometimes, but certainly not my primary email anymore. So if you're using another email as your active, this is what's on your phone or what we would prefer us to use, please let Amy know. So she can update our record and make sure we're getting to the right place. But on your side, please make sure that you're flagging my address, flagging Amy's email address, so it comes in as important. The other aspect of it is we noticed, unfortunately, that there are some that either aren't opening their packets or not opening the attachment, or not downloading their packet and taking a look at it ahead of time. This, as I said, we've noticed it just in some of the questions that come up. The key here is if you don't take the time to read your emails, if you don't take the time to open up your packet ahead of time, you can get yourself in a position where it's just embarrassing. You're not in the right place. I mean, this meeting is a good example of that. It would have been very easy to be in the wrong place. We chose this venue because the Commission on Aging was not available. Frankly, this is a nicer venue, but the Commission on Aging was simply not available for us this night. So you might have turned up there, you might have turned up at the Township Hall.
Yeah, drum circle.
It's important just to avoid embarrassment, avoid being in the wrong place at the wrong time, to be looking for our emails. We want to make sure from our end we're providing you with the information that you need, we're providing it at the right time. But also, the other thing is we have this challenge. You see, right now we have 6 people here. This is an 11-member board of which there are 10 seats that are filled. And it is absolutely essential. And here again, I'm speaking to the choir because you're here and you are here regularly, and I deeply appreciate that. So I'm speaking to the people that aren't here, but it is absolutely important that we have a full board. The items we've talked about tonight, the people that aren't here had perspectives and have skills and experience that would have added to the discussion we had tonight. And so I encourage you to make sure that you make this a priority and take a look at the information ahead of time, because we are continuing to move forward with some interesting projects with the grant program, and there are other things in the project 5800. There'll be other things that are coming up that need your input and need that. Quite frankly, we need all the members. We need that 11th seat filled, because that's the perspective that you provide as business owners, as experienced members of the community, is key to the success of what we're doing in both of these EDA districts. So
think 3 of those are in Florida.
Yes, they are. Unfortunately, we've had some that have now been here for several meetings.
And I'm gonna miss the next meeting because I'm gonna be away. I'm busy.
I will be gone
I
for
might
the
be
next
away for
2,
a while, too.
unfortunately. So, but point taken.
I might be away.
Well, so now we're starting to get into territory of not having a February meeting, I will say this. So if you would, take a moment and let Amy know. Take a moment to let Amy know your availability for February and for March, it sounds like. We're going to let her know whether you're going to be here, because we know we aren't going to have a quorum. We may have to make a change, we may have to cancel a meeting. We certainly have things to do. Obviously, we want to have a February meeting, so we can move up ahead of this grant program. But let Amy know, kind of take that proactive effort, and if you would be proactive in letting Amy know, and right away when you know you have a problem, because that helps us with our count. Amy has spent a lot of her time, it's not just this board, but Amy spends a lot of time having to kind of hunt that down. We don't really want to be in that position. We'd rather have you let her know, and then we can plan accordingly from there. So as I said, that's for the folks in this room, it's also for the people that aren't in this room.
So I'm probably one of the ones that don't respond. So do you want to respond, like last week, do you want a response that I will be there, or when you send out the board pack, or?
That would be great. If you're not gonna be there, I mean.
That's the
just
biggest
shoot me an email,
part.
Not gonna be there.
Okay.
And I always send out the board packets the Thursday before, the meeting. So you should always, if you don't see them in your inbox the Thursday before the meeting, it's in your trash, it's in your spam, it's somewhere, because I always send it out before end of day, the Thursday prior to your Tuesday meeting.
And it's also posted on the website that same time. And so if you don't get an email, maybe flag and put a calendar reminder in there, go check the website on Thursday afternoon. By about 3 or 4 o'clock, it's going to be there. But yeah, definitely, if you would, certainly let us know if you're not coming, but also just that little "I will be there" is a great response, because that then we have certainty. Certainty is very helpful.
And then I
You-
know
you-
you've received your board packet too.
You always
Yeah.
have that, you've always had that, I thought, in there, I mean, I haven't responded, but you've always had that in there, are you gonna make?
You know, since we have gone, when we went to Zoom meetings virtual, we had such good attendance, but now that we're back to in-person, I don't know if it's gonna make it a little bit more of a challenge. So I think now that we're back to in-person, it would be just a little bit easier.
Right.
So, because we don't want 3 or 4 people showing up and then we're all sitting there waiting, you know. If we gotta call a meeting, we gotta call a meeting, you know, so it just wastes time, so,
Yeah, we
For
would
sure.
rather know ahead of time,
absolutely.
because then Tom, I can just call you and say, look, we've got 3 members, that's all we've got. And then Tom can make the decision to cancel the meeting. And if we need to reschedule, Tom can make the decision, okay, send out the doodle poll request and we'll find another date. So we don't want to do that, but if we need to get bills paid or get things approved, we'll do that.
And we need 5 for a quorum.
We
Currently,
right, we need 5 because,
we have 10. Since we're talking emails, can you, the email that we all received, was it last month, I guess, about Lincoln Road? Just a little backdrop of what happened at the meeting that would prompt an email, or is there some pushback that it's not gonna happen from the Union Township Board of Trustees, or is that, I was I didn't quite know what was going on there.
yeah, so this is about the funding. We've budgeted funds for the last several years to do improvements on South Lincoln Road, south of the bridge, down to Broomfield Road. And the road commission has, I don't want to criticize, but they've taken their sweet time, we'll just put it that way. Now, they have run into problems. They have run into problems with easements. In the end, there was one easement that they could not get, and they had to come up with a different solution. And they did, they came up with a different solution that allows them to move the project forward, even though they're not getting that easement that they wanted, additional right of way. That to me is one of those, I wish we could have done that earlier. With the other ones. But anyway, it was an unusual case, house very close to the road, and they wouldn't have to go through eminent domain to get that easement, so they figured something else out. But what it came down to at the Board of Trustees level is they were reviewing the budget they were frustrated. There was some frustration expressed about this, that we keep budgeting, we're not spending it, and frankly, you as the supervisory body of these DDA districts, you have an obligation to spend the funds. The state law requires you to spend the funds within a certain number of years. The guidelines is within 5 years. Under extraordinary circumstances, the law says you go out to 10. But they don't, the state really doesn't want you keeping the funds that long. They want you to turn this stuff around. And of course, our taxing jurisdictions want to see things happen, because it's their money too, essentially, that we're using. So they want to see that money go to something, otherwise we wouldn't want it. Fortunately, we were able to extend the DDA district. The county worked with us on that. So we've got that for a while. We got that for 20 years, but nonetheless, the county has the ability, if next time we want to renew, if we need to, that we can say no. And so we want to be making good use of these funds. And to keep recycling these large amounts of money is troublesome. The West EDA district does not spend a lot of money. It's reflected in our numbers. And it's because of these large amounts of money that are reserved for the Lincoln Road project. And so anyway, the Board of Trustees, there was some frustration expressed, and an idea of what if we approve the budget without those funds? And if they did, then it would have come back to you, because of course you are the one ultimately, making the responsibility for those funds. So if they chose not to include it, they would come back to you and say, what do you want? And obviously, the conflict there would have to be resolved. In the end, the Board of Trustees decided to not do that. My impression is that a different answer will come if this project goes into 2023 unfunded, without anything moving forward.
So if you're taking a shot at the dartboard, what's your confidence level that the road commission will put this out to bid
Well, my confidence is
for
increasing.
2022?
Yeah, my confidence is increasing largely because Mark Stuber received a call from Tony Casale, the head of the road commission, yesterday. We were on holiday for us. He got a call asking for a meeting to talk about this project. My confidence is also higher because I do know that they have resolved the last of the easement issues that were hanging them up. I know the site. I know exactly what happened with it, and so that means that they can move ahead. My confidence isn't perfect because I know that they lost some state grant money because it took too long, and they do have I think they're going through a process to recover that funding again. But so that let's call it fairly confident that this will move forward in 2022 based on where we are. I will know more next week. I think our meeting is set for end of next week.
But it's just getting more expensive. I mean, I think as a board we'll have to be prepared to look at our allocated numbers and probably have to increase.
We may. We've left that for the road commission to come to us with something. At this point, the number that you have approved for 2022 is the number that we are prepared to provide. If they want to do more, they're going to have to come and convince you. And that's what we would do. This would be something where we'd have the road commission folks. We have Tony Casale and his team sitting here, and they would have to convince you that it's the right thing to do to spend more money. So you can then ask them 20 questions about why I haven't spent so long.
Well, for those of us who've been around the whole thing, it started off originally, and this is before the bridge was widened. It's just the intersection. Put up a traffic light, some widening in that, and that had to been almost 10 years ago. And then they got the money to widen the bridge. Okay, that part hold on. Well then, okay, well, we might as well connect the dots between the bridge and that. So, and frustration is there everywhere, and then you get into the easements. You're right about the road commission is not in the easement business. They do not have somebody that can go out and talk to people that need the way that you have to stay on this and keep it going. Just the reality. And you've already a little segue into the, trying to get easements to, you know, up and down the, you know, for our sidewalk project. And unless you have somebody that's dedicated to do that, that's not an easy thing to do. So it's been a comedy of errors, for lack of a better term. But hopefully we are getting to the point now where, because I don't know if, they had a very, very large grant. I don't know if that's in jeopardy, but they've got a lot more than our $300,000 that's incentive to get this thing, you know, going. Not to mention the price keeps going up every year. But yeah, and part of that was that not only did they want to go widen it out to the bridge, but, well, you need more lanes, you know, no more stacking lanes going on Broomfield, and it just, yeah, it's,
So probably will be a good idea to just send those property on the line, send them a letter from the Union Township. If we are planning to extend the width or whatever, and we would like to have easement, is your,
We have done that, and we have the same issue Jim mentioned, that we don't have somebody dedicated to go, I have pushed a lot on our contractor, road engineering, who
yes.
is
So
attempted,
what-
I've attempted to we've spent a lot of time talking to people and sending out, you know,
So
communications.
what we are planning to do for the road, you see, so in advance, you should start sending notice or something to get their feedback, what they want,
Yeah.
and that will help. Once you, I mean, if you have room, you have money, you see, then you go to them, they may say no, whatever. It will be a good idea to pre-plan.
construction. Anything else?
That's all I have.
Move the motion.
Hearing no more comments. Close this meeting at 6 o'clock. Right on the money. I'll let the time-
That's my kick that day.
I'll turn the meter up on this room.
Yes. I think we got plenty of